Now this isn't a video that I'm going to particularly enjoy writing, but ever since the whole 30-day DRM controversy has been making the rounds on the internet, there have been a lot of people that I genuinely don't know if they either have the memory of a goldfish or if they're severely misinterpreting the situation. But there has been a lot of comparison being made between the most recent deployment of PlayStation's new DRM and the original vision that Microsoft had for the Xbox One, acting as if these two things are even remotely comparable, which I don't even know where to begin. Now, the thing is, I hate making these kinds of videos, I really do, because the last thing I want is to start some kind of console war in my discussions, so I'm just gonna tell you right now. If you're someone that pledges loyalty towards any platform, it doesn't matter if it's PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, or PC, I'm not discounting you people. If you're on team anything, get some help. I'm just gonna say it as it is. You're engaging in tribalism over multi-billion to trillion-dollar companies that only see you as a dollar sign. So if I'm inviting any console warrior in my comment section, regardless of which side you're on, I don't want to waste my time with you. You clearly have issues if you're emotionally invested in plastic boxes. The only reason why I'm writing this video is because I'm honestly upset at the public, because I don't think people have realized that what Xbox wanted to achieve in 2013 has already been happening for a very long time, and we haven't been doing anything to actually stop it from becoming a reality. You see, the origin of this controversy stems from a couple of screenshots that people have been sharing within the past couple of weeks, where people have noticed that recently purchased games seem to have a 30-day validation period. Now, I do want to note that this is only visible on the PS4. If you try to check this on the PS5, you're not going to see that 30-day validation period. I just want to make that clear. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, it just means that PlayStation decided not to show that. How this was initially understood was that PlayStation was now requiring you to connect your console to the internet once in every 30 days in order to validate your license to play the game. Something that didn't used to be the case in the past, which led people to believe that this was a newly implemented DRM. Now, I first want to clear up something about this supposed DRM. Based on more recent tests and observations that people have made, this isn't actually a 30-day validation requirement. What seems to be happening here is if you buy a new game, within the first 14 days after its purchase, you're not going to have the same perpetual license that we're used to getting from the get-go. Instead, you'll only have a temporary license that needs to be renewed after 14 days, which is meant to combat an exploit that some people were supposedly abusing, where they would get a refund for a title, but still be able to play the game because the console cached the perpetual license to play the game even offline, something that you can typically do, especially if your console is set to primary. But after the 30 days pass, the license will no longer be temporary. So no, technically you don't need to validate once in every 30 days, even if you remove the CMOS battery. But that's what we know so far. I can't 100% verify this because A, I don't buy digital games, so I can't really test this for myself, and B, I'm not going to remove my CMOS battery because I'm frankly not that invested in this controversy. But as far as I'm aware, like just to give a bit of a recap, yes, if you bought a game today and you remove the CMOS battery, you're not going to be able to play that game. It will ask you to validate the date and time, which is expected. The CMOS battery is supposed to serve as an internal clock, and if that thing is removed, then the only way you can verify the date of time is through the internet. And if you're not connected to it, then no, you're not going to be able to verify the license and you're not going to be able to launch the game. But that's only if you have the temporary license. After 14 days, you should eventually have the perpetual license, and that's the one where if you remove the CMOS battery, you're going to be able to play your games offline pretty much the same way it's always been with other games that you've purchased in the past. Now again, don't take me at my word, I'm not going to remove my CMOS battery to really test this. However, based on more recent tests, this seems to be what people have observed. Which, in my opinion, if all this is just an initial 14-day detention period, then I don't think this is really an issue. Most people are not going to be negatively affected by this. Realistically, if you were able to connect to the internet to buy the game in the first place, you can probably reconnect to it 14 days later in order to get the perpetual license, even if you have to turn on your mobile phone's hotspot. Unless, of course, there's some kind of internet outage conveniently right after you just so happen to have bought the game, and it just so happens to be an outage that lasts more than a month, which at that point, we're diving into really niche scenarios that I don't think most people are gonna face. But you know, even if the situation was as dire as people initially thought, maybe I need to give a little bit of a reminder of what exactly Microsoft wanted to do back in 2013. And the best part about this is that the official article that they published in relation to Xbox One always online dependency is still available till this very day. It says here very explicitly that the console will only let you play offline up to 24 hours, which is already a very short time frame compared to 30 days. But not only that, this would prevent you from playing any games, not just digital, but also physical games. Yes, if you bought a single player game as a physical copy, the little optical disc, that thing was also vulnerable to the 24-hour check. Yeah, I don't think I need to explain why that's quite a bit more severe than just simply not letting you play digitally purchased games after 30 days of not connecting to the internet. I've seen several posts from people making fun of PlayStation's new DRM by referencing the how to share your games ad that Sony released back in the days. But here's the thing, people are acting as if this new DRM contradicts this ad, when it really doesn't. You can still lend your PlayStation games to your friends. That still doesn't require the internet. Nothing about this ad is actually outdated. It even says in the disclaimer, this only applies to disc-based games. So I don't know what point people are trying to make by referencing this ad. Now look, I'm not trying to defend PlayStation, like any DRM at all is problematic regardless of the full extent. But I just find it kind of goofy the fact that people are referencing this as if they've somehow went against when they really haven't. But once again, since people seem to have forgotten about the Xbox One controversy, maybe I should also bring up the fact that Microsoft announced that the developer would also have the choice to decide if their games could or could not be traded off, and that it could only be resold in self-approved retailers. This essentially meant that publishers like Ubisoft, EA, Activision, these amoral pieces of trash publishers, if they really wanted to squeeze as much profit as they wanted, they could configure their disc games to not allow you to resell their games in the used games market by using Xbox Always Online DRM that applied even to physical media. Like, I don't know if I need to further emphasize the fact that this DRM applied to physical media. I really want to drill this to your head. This was their end goal. They essentially wanted to kill off the used games market. This new DRM that PlayStation introduced, even if it was the worst case scenario of requiring online checks every 30 days, at most you could say that this was mainly trying to kill off the account sharing market. But if you own physical games, they are not really affected by this DRM. But you know what's the irony in all of this is that a lot of people like to talk about the initial Xbox One like it's some kind of hypothetical boogeyman reality that they walked back and that since then we've dodged a bullet. Yet people don't realize that we've had that reality for a very long time and it's only getting worse. Microsoft very recently unveiled their Project Helix, which is meant to be the next generation of Xbox, and we can already pretty much confirm that this will most likely be a digital only hybrid console/PC. If we take into account that modern PCs haven't included disk drives for a very long time, we can see in old documents that Microsoft intended to launch a digital only revision of the Xbox Series consoles. While they're doing this, they've conditioned the player base to not buy games. Many of them just pay for Game Pass and gain access to their in-house library. Some of their games don't even have physical releases, and amongst the ones that do, they don't even have the full game on the disc. And as they continue to botch their physical releases, retailers have been continuously pulling out Xbox games from the shelves. Make no mistake, we will reach a point in time when the only way to buy games from the Xbox platform will be exclusively through the Microsoft Store. And when that feature arrives, it will be functionally no different than what they had originally envisioned with the Xbox One. Because think about it, what made that original planned release so horrifying in the first place? Number 1, online dependency. Number 2, death of the used games market. If you have a digital only store environment, then you're essentially achieving the exact same thing. Buying digital games means that your license will always be tied to an online server, and you can't resell digital games. Trust me, we've already tried suing Valve for this, because they were notoriously banning users for selling accounts, something that people should be entitled to do under European consumer law, since digital goods are still considered owned goods. And yet, these companies somehow get away with depriving people of their consumer rights. But you know what's the worst part about all of this? Even though throughout this video I've mainly been focusing on Microsoft, this issue is prevalent on other platforms. If you look at the quarterly earnings, PlayStation often makes more money with digital games than they do with physical games, which means that people voluntarily choose to live in the dystopian Xbox One world that they claim to be against, despite the fact that oftentimes they have the option to buy physical media. And if you keep buying digital games over physical games, not only are you depriving yourself of the ownership of said games unnecessarily, you're also telling these companies that there's a bigger demand for digital games than there is for physical releases. And you know what's the end result? A PS5 Pro that doesn't even come included with a disc drive. And we're potentially going to see the same thing with the PS6, where if you want a disc drive, you have to buy them separately. And how much supply that we're going to get for these units is going to largely depend on how many units Sony decides to manufacture. At some point during the 10th generation, Sony might decide to completely kill off physical media if they decide that there's no demand for disc drives, or more maliciously, deliberately end production of it in order to migrate all of their users to digital only. If that happens, we're done. At that point, Don Matrick wins. In fact, I think his vision is already a reality on the Xbox side of things, people just haven't realized it yet. And make no mistake, Sony are twirling their mustache and waiting for their very moment to arrive as well. Both these companies want nothing more than to control your library, which is why I encourage you to do two things. A. Stop buying digital games on consoles. You still have physical media, treasure it while it still exists. B. Support Stop Killing Games. Right now, a lot of the issues that we have stem from the fact that as consumers we don't have enough protection from corporate blood-sucking vampires taking away your ownership under the guise of digital rights management. But if we can sort out a lot of these issues that we currently have with the EU Commission, then honestly there wouldn't even really need to be a war between digital and physical games, which is, by the way, a war that eventually becomes meaningless if these corporations also continue to inject arbitrary online dependencies with even physical releases, which we have seen with some titles like The Crew, the Call of Duty games, and Assassin's Creed. We first need to recognize the issue, we need to recognize what we've lost, what we can claim back, and what we can currently fight for. And that's all I want to share.